I didn't think much of it at first. Just another bill, another month, another quiet night in a neighborhood where nothing ever really happens. But when my electricity bill tripled, then quadrupled, I knew something was off. And I'm not the kind of guy who ignores that kind of thing, especially not when I've spent most of my life dealing with people who lie for a living. See, my name's Daniel Carter. Most people who meet me think I work in IT, or maybe accounting, skinny guy, glasses, quiet voice, the kind of person you'd expect to be hunched over a laptop, not kicking down doors. And honestly, I don't correct them. I've been a cop for over a decade now, but I don't advertise it. Not to neighbors, not to strangers, not even to most of my friends. It just complicates things. People start acting different, watching what they say, like you're going to write them a ticket for a bad joke. I hate that. So I keep it simple. I go to work, deal with the chaos, come home, shut the world out. My house sits on the edge of a quiet suburban block in North Ridgewood. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and my 14-year-old son, Lucas, when he stays over. His mom and I split custody, and honestly, those weekends with him are the only time the place feels alive. Now here's the weird part. My house technically isn't part of the local HOA. It's like I'm just outside their invisible fence, a block and a half away from where their rules actually apply. I made sure of that when I bought the place. I'd heard enough horror stories about HOAs turning into mini dictatorships, people getting fined for grass height, mailbox color, you name it. I didn't want any part of that. But even though I wasn't in it, they were still close enough to be a presence. You'd see their little patrol trucks driving around sometimes, guys in uniforms that looked just a little too official, like they were trying real hard to pass as law enforcement. It always rubbed me the wrong way, not just because of the impersonation vibe, but because it's dangerous. People see a uniform, they assume authority, and that assumption can get someone hurt. Still, it wasn't my problem, or at least, that's what I told myself. Until the bills started climbing. The first month, I figured it was a fluke. Maybe I left something running. Maybe Lucas forgot to turn something off, who knows. Second month, it doubled again. That's when I called an electrician. Guy came out, checked everything, breakers, outlets, appliances, even the meter. Told me everything looked clean. No leaks, no faulty wiring, nothing. Maybe you're just using more power than you think, he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. Yeah, it didn't sit right. So I started being extra careful, unplugging things, turning stuff off, practically living like I was trying to conserve power during a blackout. And still, next bill came in just as high. That's when it started messing with my head. I remember standing in my kitchen one night, staring at the fridge like it was personally betraying me, thinking, what the hell are you doing when I'm not looking? Sounds stupid now, but when you can't find an answer, your brain starts filling in blanks with nonsense. I even called a second electrician, older guy, more thorough. He spent almost 3 hours going through everything, testing, measuring, checking outside connections. Same conclusion. System's fine, he said. If there's a problem, it's not inside your house. Not inside my house. That line stuck with me. Because if it's not inside, then where? I didn't have an answer. Not until the day Lucas called me. It was a Saturday. I had just left the pharmacy, picking up some stuff for him. Nothing serious, just allergies acting up again. He didn't want to come with me. Said he'd stay home, play some games, maybe watch TV. He's a good kid, responsible, knows the rules, doesn't mess around. So when my phone rang and I saw his name and heard his voice shaking on the other end, yeah, that got my attention real fast. Dad, there's people outside. What do you mean, people? I asked, already heading back to the car. They're messing with something, like wires, near the side of the house. My grip tightened on the steering wheel. Are they trying to get inside? No, I don't think so. They're just hooking something up. They've got tools, and they're wearing uniforms. Uniforms? What kind of uniforms? There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, trying to stay quiet. They say, HOA patrol. I didn't say anything for a second, just started the engine and pulled out faster than I probably should have. Listen to me, Lucas, I said, keeping my voice steady. Stay inside. Don't open the door, don't make noise. Just watch from the window if you can do it safely. And if you can, take pictures. But don't let them see you, okay? Okay, I'm on my way. The drive back felt longer than it was. Every red light, every slow car in front of me, it all just dragged. My mind was already running through possibilities, theft, vandalism, something worse. But none of it made sense. Why would anyone mess with my house like that, especially in broad daylight? By the time I pulled into my driveway, they were gone. Just like that. No truck, no uniforms, no sign of anyone. But Lucas was waiting inside, phone in hand, eyes wide. I took pictures, he said, like he needed me to know he did exactly what I asked. And when I looked at those photos, yeah, that's when everything clicked. Because those HOA patrol guys weren't just standing around. They were tapped into my power. And suddenly, those insane electricity bills didn't seem so mysterious anymore. To be continued. I stood there in my living room, phone in my hand, flipping through those pictures Lucas took, zooming in, out, back in again. And the more I looked, the less it felt like some weird misunderstanding, and the more it started to look like something deliberate, organized, almost routine. They weren't guessing, they weren't fumbling around like amateurs, they knew exactly where to go, exactly what to connect, like they'd done it before, just not to me. And that thought, that part right there, that's what really got under my skin, because it meant I probably wasn't the only one. Lucas kept watching me, waiting for some kind of reaction, and I realized I'd been quiet too long. You did good, I told him, putting a hand on his shoulder. Real good, you stayed calm. You got evidence, that's exactly what I needed. He nodded, still a little shaken, and I could tell he was trying to act tougher than he felt. Kids do that when they think you need them to be okay. I stepped outside after that, walked over to the side of the house where they'd been standing. And yeah, there it was, subtle, but if you knew what you were looking at, you could see where they'd tapped into the line. Clean work, temporary, easy to remove, hard to notice. I crouched down, ran my fingers along the cable, and just exhaled slow. All right, I muttered to myself. So that's how we're doing this. Now here's the thing. I could have gone straight into cop mode right then and there. Call it in, file a report, bring people down on them hard. But I didn't. And maybe that was my mistake. Or maybe it's the reason things played out the way they did. I wanted to give them a chance, not out of kindness, not really, but because I wanted to see how far they thought they could push it. People show you who they are when they think they're safe. So instead, I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and wrote an email. Kept it simple, polite, almost annoyingly reasonable. I explained that I had evidence of individuals identifying themselves as HOA patrol accessing my electrical system without permission, that I was not part of the HOA, and that I expected the situation to be addressed internally before it escalated any further. No threats, no mention of my job, just facts. I hit send and waited. Now if this were a normal story, that would have been the part where someone from management calls me back, apologizes, promises to fix everything, maybe offers compensation. That's how it should have gone. It didn't. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. Not a friendly knock either, the kind that carries attitude, like whoever's on the other side already thinks they're in charge. I opened it, and sure enough, 2 of them standing there. Same uniforms Lucas described, press shirts, badges that looked just official enough to confuse people, posture like they were trying to fill shoes that didn't belong to them. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone neutral. The taller one stepped forward, holding a clipboard like it meant something. We're here regarding multiple violations issued to this property. I blinked at him. That's a strange way to say sorry for stealing my electricity. He didn't even react, just flipped a page like I hadn't spoken. You've accumulated several fines under HOA code: improper lawn maintenance, unauthorized parking usage, and failure to comply with community standards. I actually laughed at that, couldn't help it. You do realize I'm not part of your HOA, right? The second guy crossed his arms, puffed his chest a little. That's not how this works. No. I leaned against the doorframe. Then explain it to me. The first guy tapped the clipboard. You can settle these fines today. Check or cash. I looked down at the paper he handed me. A list of violations. All dated, all detailed, all complete nonsense. It was almost impressive, the level of effort they put into something so stupid. I'm not paying you a dime, I said, handing it back. And you might want to reconsider coming back here. The second guy smirked. We'll see about that. They turned and walked off like they'd just delivered some kind of warning, like I was supposed to feel intimidated. I closed the door slowly, stood there for a second, and just shook my head. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Life got busy after that. Lucas had baseball tryouts, work picked up, a couple late nights on cases that drained more out of me than I'd like to admit. And for a while, I let it sit. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't think they'd be stupid enough to push it further. I underestimated them. About a week later, they came back. This time, 3 of them. Same 2 from before, plus a third guy who looked like he was there purely for intimidation. No uniform, just a sleeveless shirt, arms crossed, trying real hard to look like muscle. They didn't knock right away, just stood there for a second, like they were building up the moment. Then, bang, bang, bang. I opened the door before they could do it again. Didn't get your payment, the tall one said, like we were continuing a conversation that never ended. That's because I never sent one, I replied. And I never will. The third guy stepped forward slightly, cracking his knuckles like it was some kind of performance. You got a problem understanding how things work around here? I tilted my head a little. Yeah, I do actually. Especially the part where you think you have authority over a property that isn't even in your jurisdiction. The second guy scoffed. You see this uniform? He said, tugging at his shirt. You know what that means. I glanced at it, then back at him. That everything else is in the laundry? That one hit a nerve. His face tightened, and the smirk dropped real quick. It means I'm the law around here, he snapped. And when we tell you to do something, you do it. Or things get complicated. There it was. Not just bluffing anymore. Now we were in threat territory. And that's when something in me shifted, not anger, not exactly, more like clarity. Because up until that moment, this had been annoying, ridiculous, almost laughable. But the second they started leaning into intimidation, I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. How complicated are we talking? I asked, my voice quieter now, steadier. The third guy smirked. Complicated enough that you don't want to find out. There was a pause, a long one, and I could see it in their eyes, that expectation, that I'd back down, maybe try to negotiate, maybe show a little fear. Instead, I nodded slowly. All right, I said. Give me a second. I'll grab my wallet. You could almost feel the shift in their posture, shoulders relaxing, expressions changing, like they'd just won something. And that right there, that moment, that's exactly what I was waiting for. I reached into my back pocket, felt the leather, pulled it out, flipped it open. But not to the cash. I turned it just enough for them to see the badge. Didn't say anything at first, just let it sit there, let it register. And when it did, yeah, that's when everything changed. To be continued. For a second, nobody said anything. It was almost quiet enough to hear the air shift between us. The guy in the sleeveless shirt stopped moving completely, like someone had hit pause on him mid-breath. The tall one blinked twice, slow, like his brain was trying to catch up with what his eyes were seeing. And the one who'd been talking about being the law. Yeah, his face drained so fast, it was almost impressive. I didn't raise my voice, didn't step forward, didn't do anything dramatic. Just held the badge there, steady, and let the weight of it settle in. You were saying something about being the law? I asked, calm, almost conversational, like we were back at the beginning of the day instead of standing in the middle of this mess. No one answered. The silence stretched just a little longer, and then I tilted my head, just enough to break it. Go on. I'm listening. The tall one finally swallowed, hard. We didn't realize. No. I cut in gently. You didn't. I closed the badge and slipped it back into my pocket like it wasn't even the important part, like the real problem was everything that came before it. Let's try this again, I said, folding my arms loosely. You've been tapping into my power line, sending me fake fines, and now you're standing on my porch making threats. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to explain, slowly, who told you to do this, or we can have this conversation somewhere a lot less comfortable. That did it. Whatever confidence they walked up with, it was gone. Completely. The sleeveless guy took a step back, like distance might somehow make him invisible. The one with the clipboard fumbled with it, flipping pages that didn't matter anymore. And the law guy, he just shook his head, like he was trying to undo the last 10 minutes of his life. We were just doing our job, he muttered. I let out a short breath, not quite a laugh, but close. No, I said, you weren't. You were doing what someone told you to do, and you didn't bother asking if it was legal. I took a step forward then, not aggressive, just enough to shift the balance. So I'll ask again who. They looked at each other, that silent kind of conversation people have when they're deciding who's going to take the fall. And finally, the tall one spoke. It was Ms. Delaney. She's on the HOA board. She handles enforcement. There it was. A name. A direction. Something real. I nodded once, like I expected it. All right, I said quietly. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to leave, right now. You're not coming back. You're not contacting me again. And you're definitely not touching anything on this property. And if I see you anywhere near here after today. I let the sentence hang, didn't need to finish it. They understood. Yes, sir. The tall one said quickly, already stepping back. Sir. Funny how that word shows up only after people realize they're not in control anymore. They turned and left without another word, no bravado, no attitude, just three guys trying to get off a porch as fast as possible without running. I stood there for a moment after they were gone, just watching the empty street, letting the adrenaline settle. And yeah, part of me felt that satisfaction, that clean, simple sense of putting something in its place. But it didn't last long, because the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Not what they did. I'd seen worse. But how easy it had been for them to believe they could get away with it. That someone had given them just enough authority, or the illusion of it, to make them think they were untouchable. And that meant one thing. This didn't start with them. So the next morning, I made a call. Not to dispatch, not to a patrol unit. I went straight to the HOA management company. Introduced myself properly this time. Name, badge, department, the whole thing. And I told them everything. The power theft, the fake fines, the threats, all of it. I didn't raise my voice, didn't accuse. I just laid it out, piece by piece, like evidence on a table. There was a long pause on the other end when I finished. Then the woman I was speaking to cleared her throat. Mr. Carter, I can assure you, this is not standard procedure. I figured, I said. But it is happening. Another pause. Shorter this time. We're going to need documentation. You'll have it, I replied. Photos, bills, everything. And I meant it. Over the next couple days, I put it all together. Timelines, statements, the images Lucas took, even the notes from the electricians. Clean, organized, the kind of file that doesn't leave room for excuses. And then, I waited. It took a couple weeks. Longer than I would have liked, but not surprising. These things tend to move slow when they involve people trying to protect themselves. But when the response came, it came all at once. Ms. Delaney, the board member, she wasn't just overseeing enforcement. She'd been pushing it hard, encouraging the patrol guys to issue more fines, to expand their reach, to make examples out of people who didn't comply, even if those people weren't technically under HOA authority. And the electricity? That was the part that crossed the line from abuse of power into something else entirely. They'd been using outside properties, like mine, to offset usage for HOA-managed areas, lighting, facilities, things that cost money. Small amounts at a time, spread out, just enough to avoid attention. Except they picked the wrong house. The board held an emergency meeting. From what I heard, it wasn't pretty. By the end of it, Ms. Delaney was out, removed completely. The patrol team? Gone. Replaced with something closer to what they were supposed to be in the first place. Actual neighborhood watch. No fake authority. No uniforms trying to mimic law enforcement. And then, about a week later, I got a letter. Plain envelope. HOA letterhead. Inside, an apology. Formal, carefully worded, the kind that's probably been reviewed by more than one lawyer. And a check. Enough to cover every extra dollar I'd paid in those inflated bills, plus a little more. I stared at it for a while, sitting at the same kitchen table where this whole thing really started, and I'll be honest, I wasn't sure how I felt. Part of me appreciated it, closure, accountability, all that. But another part, the part that's seen how things like this play out over and over, kept thinking about how many people didn't have a badge in their pocket when something like this happened to them. How many just paid the fines, stayed quiet, assumed they were in the wrong because someone told them they were. I never filed charges. Could I have? Yeah, probably should have, depending on who you ask. But sometimes, fixing the system that allowed something to happen in the first place does more than punishing the people at the bottom of it. Or maybe that's just something I tell myself, so I can sleep better. These days, things are quiet again. No patrol trucks pretending to be something they're not. No surprise bills. No knocks on the door that come with attitude attached. Lucas still stays over on weekends, still leaves lights on in every room like he's trying to signal airplanes. And yeah, now I notice it, but I don't mind as much. Because at least now I know it's just him, not someone outside, thinking they've got the right to take something that isn't theirs. But here's the thing that sticks with me, and maybe you'll see it differently. Those guys, the ones on my porch, they backed down the second they saw the badge. Not because what they were doing suddenly became wrong, but because they realized they'd picked the wrong person to do it to. And that raises a question I don't really have an answer for. What happens when they don't? When the person on the other side of that door doesn't know the law, doesn't push back, doesn't have proof, does it just keep going? So I'm curious, if you were in that situation, no badge, no leverage, just you and someone telling you they're the law, what would you have done? Would you fight it? Or would you just pay and hope it stops? Let me know.